All right. I think we're all here, Kelly, if we want to get started. So we appreciate you all joining us this morning, I guess afternoon now. We are very excited about the next couple of months and walking through the applications that we're going to get for the Jobs and Infrastructure Committee. So we really appreciate all of your participation. And this is Jen Wade. She is our grants manager here at OPB. I'm Stephanie Beck. I'm the deputy director. And we have Kelly Farr here, our director of OPB. And Jen and I will kind of be your go-to over the next few months guiding this process. So please feel free to reach out to us anytime, but we will kick it off. And Kelly, did you want to say a few words?
Yep. Hey, thank y'all for everybody coming and being a part of this process. And the first thing I'm going to kick this thing off is ask for your patience through this process and your flexibility. This is the first time we've ever done something like this. The federal government just started giving out the guidelines less than 60 days ago on how to distribute this money. They've already updated them 4 different times, including last night. And so this is going to be a process that's going to continuously evolve. But we do have a lot of really good people here at OPB. Jen has a significant amount of experience with grants, and so she will help you out tremendously with the process and advice and direction. We're not going to have all the answers when you ask the questions, but we're going to do our best effort to make sure we can run down all of the answers as quickly as possible. And so, again, just appreciate y'all participating in this. And I think everybody has my contact information. If not, let me know, we'll get it to you. But Jen and Stephanie will, Stephanie she got a lot of experience through CRF, although this pot of money is considerably different than how CRF was designed. So they're not really analogous, but we did get a lot of experience through that. We're going to apply some of our best lessons learned through that. And then Jen will help us through the formal process. So with that, I've got to go run. There's something else that's kind of going on right now we need to get taken care of. But before I leave, anybody have any questions for me or want to ask anything about this? I would imagine not. I just started, so. So I appreciate it. If something does come up, please let me know. Thank y'all again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Jen, I'll let you drive that piece.
You want to also just let them know, anybody who has questions, if you want to type them in the chat, one of us will be manning the as well. So if you do have questions, just type them in the chat and we'll kind of get to them as they come up.
And also, if you're joining us online, if you can make sure that you're on mute, just so that we don't get feedback as people are asking questions, we appreciate that. But certainly feel free to jump in with any questions that you might have. We are recording this meeting, so as an executive agency, all of the business that this committee conducts will be subject to the Open Records and Open Meetings Act. So we'll be posting any notifications that the committee is meeting online. The public is welcome to call in or attend. And then we will also be recording these to post online afterwards, just so everybody is aware. And then again, like any kind of emails back and forth with our office are all subject to open records. And the applications that we get in from applicants will be, we plan on putting those online, so that will all be open records that we can.
Find us if you don't mind putting your phone on mute, please.
Just a very brief overview of the state and local fiscal recovery fund. The American Rescue Plan was enacted on March 11th, and that is the overall act that included the state recovery fund that we're going to be looking at here. Of the state recovery fund piece, we are going to get $4.8 billion through that fund. We have already received half of that in the first tranche back in May for 2.4. And so that's really the tranche that we are looking at through this committee process. We expect that we will get the second tranche in 12 months. That is what Treasury has said. But as OPB, we don't like to bank on money until it is in our hands. So right now we're looking at the first tranche of money. The period of performance per the Treasury guidelines is March 3rd of this year through the end of December in 2026. So of course there are lots of infrastructure projects that will be coming through this. So we do have a fairly long time to get those constructed and put into place. But we are required to have all of our funds obligated by the end of December 2024. So we have some time to decide, what projects are going to be in the pipeline out of both of these tranches, but we do have to have it all obligated by that 2024 deadline. So there are 6 basic buckets that the state fiscal recovery funds can be used in. This committee will be looking at 3 of those buckets. And so this is the committee focus areas. First is going to be the negative economic impact related to COVID on low income or minority communities, public health sectors, industry that was disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. And then the other 2 committees are going to be water and sewer as well as broadband. So those will be 2 separate committees. And largely looking at clean water and drinking water infrastructure, and then also expansion of broadband to underserved communities. Right now, we have planning amounts, as you see here on the slide, 300 million for broadband, water and sewer 250, and 325 for negative economic impact. Those are planning amounts that we've set aside now. Because we are new to this, and this is a brand new program, we don't know what we're going to see yet coming through the application process. So there is some flexibility there once we see what starts coming in and what the needs are. But this is sort of the planning amounts that we have laid out right now by committee. Some of the other things that the state fiscal recovery fund can be used for, but are not what we're going to be looking at as part of this committee process, is public health funding for hospitals, behavioral health, offsetting public sector revenue, which we don't anticipate needing at this time, and then premium pay for certain essential workers throughout this process. So those of you who are serving on our negative economic impact committee, you will certainly have the largest scope of projects to look at. There is a very wide breadth of eligibility that committee will cover. And it kind of takes 2 streams. One looking at individual assistance to families and workers, and the other kind of industry focus and looking at small businesses or industries that were disproportionately affected by COVID-19. So some of the examples that Treasury's guidance gives us for programs we might see for workers and families would be unemployment, doing job training to get people back to work or to shift to another industry that was disproportionately impacted, food, housing relief, survivors benefits for those. I know I have gotten a few calls from folks looking at, is there a program to help offset funeral expenses, et cetera, for people that were impacted. Small business assistance, and there's a wide variety that they offer of programs that would be eligible for small business assistance, loans, grants, business counseling to help somebody, restart their small business. And then also looking very much at our hardest hit industries, specifically tourism, travel, and hospitality are what is mentioned in the Treasury guidance, but they do give us some flexibility that if there's an area of the state where a particular sector was hit very hard in that area of the state, that could also be eligible, even if it wasn't one of those 3. A lot of the Treasury guidance is very focused on equity with the negative economic impact. And so looking at things like health disparities between communities, where you may have communities that were already facing health issues in their area being disproportionately impacted by this. So remediating some of those needs in specific communities. Housing and homelessness assistance, helping people to move to new areas where maybe there's more economic impact or economic opportunity, getting them back into homes, rental assistance, et cetera. And then also addressing educational disparities for kids, making sure that we can have catching up for folks who may have fallen behind during virtual learning, having more tutoring or after school programs, counseling services for kids in needs in schools, and then also early learning and childcare as well. So again, family and children needs, high quality childcare, and then foster programs as well are mentioned in the Treasury guidance as being eligible. And then the last thing I want to mention on here that is in the Treasury guidance is that it does allow for the state to utilize funds to build out our own systems to enable us to better track the performance of all of these programs. So it allows us to rebuild certain state capacity up to its pre-pandemic levels or to enhance our capacities in order to get better data on how some of these programs work. So just as a footnote on there, there is some opportunity at the state level, for like a GTA to help us track how these programs are doing. We will have to do a performance plan for the federal government. And there are a large number of performance measures that we'll have to track through each of these grant streams. So something to keep in mind as you are looking at applicants, we will want to know what performance metrics they'll be tracking as part of their program. And then we will need to be able to report back to the feds on the performance of those individual programs. Water and sewer infrastructure is a little more straightforward than our negative economic impact. It's very much in line with what we see for our clean water and drinking water programs at the federal level, providing an additional bucket of money for that. So building or upgrade facilities, transmission lines, distribution systems, stormwater systems, water reuse, et cetera. So largely looking at the current eligibility criteria for those existing two federal programs and tracking along those lines. And then finally, broadband infrastructure. Again, looking at communities that are currently unserved or underserved, and they give that definition as the 25 down, 3 up, people who don't have access to that. The guidance encourages states to look at projects that are going to offer a 100 meg up and 100 meg down speed. And they do, understand that may not be always possible, but that's what their target is for those infrastructure projects. The guidance also emphasizes last mile delivery out of some of those project plans, but it doesn't restrict the guidelines to be just last mile projects. So middle mile projects should be eligible as well. And then there is the opportunity to do assistance to families to help them with internet access and funding, et cetera. But that really falls under the negative economic impact for individual assistance more so than this broadband. This is looking very much at infrastructure itself. So with that, I will turn it over to Jen and she will talk to y'all about what the application process is going to look like for applicants and what your role is going to be going through this. Any questions on the eligibility before we switch over? Okay.
There might be a few folks that text trying to get in, but I think I got it ready. Okay, I'm a super fast talker, so if you need me to slow down, just let me know. It's a little clear. Okay. So for the application criteria for this state piece of the state local fiscal recovery funds, we're going to open it up to government organizations, state agencies, county governments, city or township governments, special district governments, and then Georgia professional associations, organizations, industry trade associations, business organizations, trade or professional, and then nonprofit organizations. We will push this application out. We have our own grants portal. We are in the process right now of actually renaming that. It's formerly known as Georgia or Grant Care. No, where's ours?
Georgia Cares.
Thank you. We have our own internal one too. We're renaming it to Georgia Grants, just so that there's no confusion that it's care funded. So we are in the process of renaming this. So this is kind of what it will look like in our portal. Applicants will be able to go to this portal and they'll see the grant opportunities on that front page. And then they'll be listed with the available grants button. From there, they will be instructed to do an account registration, and they will be required to have that registration prior to being able to go actually into their application to even put anything into their form. This is what those grant opportunities, once they hit the available opportunities button, this is how it will be broken down. You'll see we have the water, sewer infrastructure, broadband, and this will be changed to negative economic impact. And then we also have the years coming up as well. So that will be on the page as well. Once they click on a specific one, so for this one, it's water, sewer, they'll be directed to a page that gives them the overview, the eligibility requirements, the application period, the performance period, their award period, which is just generally a little bit different depending on the program. As Stephanie said, it goes out to 2026. For the state, we have obligated by 2024, so that will be on there as well. And then the reporting requirements that we're required by Treasury to adhere to, and then a general application review overview of how we will review the applications. This is the broadband one. They all will look the same. They'll just have varying overviews. Same for economic impact. And this is the application fields. We're already fielding a couple of calls. I know I've gotten several of them that are concerned that we only have a 30-day application period and that a broadband or some kind of infrastructure project might be hard to kind of get a design in that time frame. So we simplified it. And so I'm assuring folks too, it's a very, very simplified grant application, not like your typical DOJ or NSF grant process where it's like 25 pages. Very simplified application fields, starting with the proposal name. So you have a proposal name, a proposal summary, and that'll be about 250 words, just a general overview of what their project entails. Their project narrative will be comprised of a description of general line of the.
Sorry.
If you just joined, can you mute your line?
Project design and implementation, the capabilities and competencies, and that's just a general overview of the agency's competencies and capabilities to not just only implement the actual grant itself, but the financial capabilities of managing grant funds as well. Then we'll have a plan for collecting the data required, basically like, outlining who will be responsible for collecting the data for the reporting requirements and their budget categories. We've broken down, we have it up here already, but it's basically broken down to like personnel, fringe, equipment, supplies, construction costs and whatnot. So we can actually see a total full-fledged budget from them. And then match funds as well. So as you'll see in the scoring criteria later, they have the ability to use this as match funding and get scored on that as well. And then at the bottom, they'll have a place where they can put supporting documentation. If they have some kind of project implementation plan or anything else they want us to see, they'll be able to attach that there and we can get that to you guys in the packets. So this is submission criteria for submitting applications. They'll be required to complete the registration like I talked about initially. They will be required, like I said, to have that DUNS number. We are going to, by the end of the week, so by close of business tomorrow, go ahead and publish some of this criteria on the website so folks can see what we're going to ask them for to kind of ease their anxiety about having that, just that month time period. That gives them the opportunity to go ahead and get a DUNS number if they don't already have it. In addition, they will be required to have that SAMS number. That is a requirement from Treasury. That does take a little bit longer to get. So we're not making it a required field to actually put the application together. We can get that on the back end. Once they actually are awarded, we can get that from them on the back end. And again, their complete grant application, we kind of went over those already, so I won't tell you what the details there. In addition to all the application fields, including the supporting documentation, and on the end of the grant award, once they are awarded, the committee selects them and with their, in addition to the final scoring, they will be required to send over a signed terms and agreement. And that just outlines the terms of the award, the project period, the expected reporting requirements that they'll need to turn around to us, the dates and whatnot, any remittance information, or everything specific to their grant basically is in that terms and conditions document. Am I going too fast? Okay. So this is just a general reporting timeline, and this is for the states what we have to turn in. I know Stephanie mentioned an interim report. So by August 31st, we basically have to tell Treasury, here's kind of our general overview of where we're going with this. If we don't have any obligated, which this will be the closing of the application period, so we won't have anything actually obligated at this time because we'll be in the application review. Each project has to send over project and expenditure reports, which we turn in on a quarterly basis, and that will begin October 31st. And then 30 days after the end of each quarter thereafter. The recovery plan that Stephanie addressed, that's annually. First one is due August 31st, at the same time the interim report is due. So this is where it gets a little bit cumbersome with the reporting requirements, and we are, as Kelly said, Treasury's releasing new guidance on this, so these could change. It's very likely that they may ask us for more information or kind of change it a little bit. But as of right now, the reporting requirements include, but aren't limited to, the quarterly project and expenditure report and project status reports. Additional infrastructure reporting requirements. So for those of you on the infrastructure committee, when you're looking at these applications, you want to just make sure that the entity has the competencies and capabilities to be able to collect this type of data. So they're looking for detailed project level information, including operations dates and location data. A documentation of wage and labor standards for contractors, subcontractors for projects over 10 million. Water and sewer, they will have to report their National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit number if applicable. This is not going to be applicable to everyone. And then the public water system ID number as well, also if applicable. Broadband reporting requirements, and these are all on top of that project expenditure stuff. They will report on data on speed, pricing, miles of fiber, if they're doing fiber, cost per mile and passing, number of households projected to have increased access to broadband and specific upload speeds, number of institutions and businesses projected to have increased access to broadband meeting the minimum speed standards. Just a little bit of note on that. Treasury, when they updated the FAQs last night, businesses can also mean schools. So if an entity proposes broadband access to schools, that would also count under the businesses. So it's more broad. For the negative economic impact reporting requirements, those will be the most cumbersome. They'll need to report the number of workers enrolled in and completed sectoral job training, if that kind of training is involved in their proposal. The number of participants in summer youth employment programs, if that's applicable. A description of how program responds to negative economic impact if we are funding industries outside of travel, tourism, and hospitality. So that may be something that we see with the applications that come in. Project demographic distribution, there's an insert in the interim guide that talks about the qualified census tract. So they just need to put in there if that is in that demographic distribution. And then equity data as well.
Jan, for this category, is this where more of your nonprofit organizations will be applying for this type of funding?
Yeah, it could be a lot. There could be, and they will be probably the ones that would be able to most effectively get that equity data too, because they break it down that way. For instance, you know, if I'm just throwing out there one, that's a good nonprofit, like Boys and Girls Club we've worked with before, you know, they do have demographic data on the students that they provide services to and things like that. Or if it was like the YMCA or something like that.
Or what about your community action agencies that have a contract with the state and they get federal funding?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, could they apply for this type of?
Yeah, I think that would be under the eligibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there is extra guidance on partnering with government agencies there too, and that would follow up. And if they're partnering with them, it just depends on, I guess, who applies. So they would apply probably under that state piece, and they use their. I guess it all falls under what DUNS number they're going to apply under. I guess that would be the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, now the fun part, the committee review process. So your job as the Jobs and Infrastructure Committee is to ensure federal coronavirus relief dollars are allocated strategically across our state and address one-time funding needs in these key areas. For the committee roles, you're going to review the applications, and you guys are going to review them on an individual basis first, and we'll kind of get to that. So there'll be like a, you know, individual, and then you'll come together. You're going to provide feedback and then score projects with a checklist scoring criteria. This is a general timeline for grant awards. So we are here, obviously, in the commencement meeting. August 1st through August 31st will be our application period. August 31st through September 7th, 2021. We will start to screen applicants, the overall applications for just compliance and overall eligibility, just to kind of determine, just to make sure that they're, you know, being funneled to the appropriate committees and that meet the eligibility requirements. And then September 8th through the 22nd, you guys will begin your committee reviews, your individual committee reviews. The week of September 27th is where it's slated right now. At that time, we will have a collaborative session in which you guys will all come together, and I'll give you some more details later to discuss applicant programs, feasibility, and whatnot. At that time, also, if you have additional questions that you'd like to ask, or there was something that maybe wasn't covered in as much detail as you would like, at that time, you can actually request that the applicant do an applicant presentation where they come in, do their presentation of their proposal, and you can ask questions and adjust your score based on that. The target date for the final scores is the week of October 4th, 2021. And then the final review will be done the week of October 11th. We hope to have awards done by October 18th, but that date is kind of fluctuating right now. That's our anticipated target date. Depending on the process and obviously the volume of applicants that we might receive, we might get, a small pool, it might be thousands. So we just don't know yet. So that's targeted, but we may end up pushing that depending on the volume. So here's our scoring criteria. So we are still in the planning process of this right now. We hope to make this an automated process for you all, in that we send you a DocuSign document for each of the candidates. That way you're able to go ahead and it calculates the score for you. You hit submit and then it comes back to us. That just depends on a couple of things, whether or not that's feasible with our system and the volume that we get. If it's thousands, it may just be easier to give you guys a PDF copy and hand do them, and then we put them in the system. So we're still kind of working through that. We wanted to give you a heads up on kind of where we're thinking, we might go with that. In that sheet, you will have 6 criteria that you will go through, and each of them has a weight on it. And I'll go through the description of each of them. The first one will be description of the issue, and this all is comprised of their project narrative. This will be 15% of their overall score. The applicant will identify the specific problem in the jurisdiction that it seeks to address and how it was impacted by COVID-19. The applicant will describe the process used to assess, analyze, or determine the nature of the problem. And what we're looking for here is numbers and statistics, not just we have a population of such and such, but really how it has impacted, if they were to, put a broadband application in, the kind of the numbers and demographics surrounding that, what their broadband speed are as of now, and the number of folks that have access or do not have access, stuff like that. If applicable, the applicant explains gaps in resources and impact due to COVID-19. Project design and implementation. This will be 30% of their score. This is where the applicant will specify how the project will accomplish the expected outcomes by providing the objectives and performance measures applicable to the project. The application includes a comprehensive timeline as an attachment that identifies milestones, numerically lists deliverables, and indicates who is responsible for each activity. And the applicant specifically demonstrates broader impact to communities, jurisdictions, or industries. And so this is a very big priority for these COVID response funds under the project implementation. So this is what we're really looking for. Applications that demonstrate a broader impact to their community or jurisdictions or industries, right? Capabilities and competencies, that'll be 15% of their overall score. The applicant fully describes the applicant's capabilities to implement the project and the competencies of the staff assigned to the project. The applicant specifically describes the level of support for the project, as well as the expertise of the individuals who will be responsible for managing the project. If they don't have the people to implement the project, like they're putting a project or proposal together and they are seeking to hire people, and that's fine to put in there that they're seeking to hire someone, but just kind of a description of what that person's role will be in implementing the project. Performance measure, this will be 10%. We're really just looking for the applicant to demonstrate the understanding of the data collection requirements for the turnaround of the reporting requirements to Treasury. The applicant identifying the person who will collect the data, who is responsible for performance and outcome measurement, and how the information will be used to guide the impact of the program. The applicant demonstrates an understanding of the performance indicators and programmatic data requirements for the category in which they applied. The budget will be 15% of their total score, and they just basically have to demonstrate a budget that's complete, cost-effective, and allowable. If they have categories that are, if for instance, they put supplies in as equipment and that really needs to go to a different category, we're not really taking off points for that because that can be adjusted after if they're awarded. We're just really focusing on it that's cost-effective and allowable. And then the matching funds, that's going to be 15% of their application. The applicant has submitted a project that leverages funds available from other sources to maximize impact and is requesting funds that will be used to match these funds dollar for dollar. So I mentioned the collaboration session earlier, so you will start individually scoring these applications. You will come together and reconvene for at least one collaboration session to discuss strengths and weaknesses of the application with other committee members and select applicants for formal presentation of their grant if necessary. If not, we can score them and move forward. During this time, members may discuss their scoring based on the criteria. Members may also adjust their scores based on this criteria. Should a presentation be needed for the committee to hear more details about a proposal, applicants will be scheduled to present in front of the respective committee. At this time, you can ask questions of the applicants regarding their proposal. We just want to make sure you take notes, right? You can choose to update your score if you change your mind based on something they addressed during that presentation or the collaboration session, either one. We just ask that you take notes to corroborate that change. You don't have to, if you put a 3 in one category, like project implementation, you put a 3 there, you don't have to leave that there, cross it out, and then put a 9. You can just put it there and then just a simple note, score was changed due to receiving more information on project implementation that was not outlined in the initial proposal, something like that. Notes should be retained and will be collected by final score deadline. So we maintain your notes, hang on to those, and we will collect those at that final scoring date. That was really fast. I told you to talk fast. Any questions or feedback on those?
Jim.
Yeah.
Jim.
Let them go ahead.
Are you sure?
Well, my question is relating to, are we going to discuss anything about how to encourage local governments, nonprofits, especially down in rural Georgia? Make sure that they are aware that these funds are available. Are we going to be receiving any kind of guidance on how to really market this committee and these funds for the state and how to encourage these organizations to apply for this funding?
We can certainly look at that.
Okay.
One thing we do want to keep in mind is that we're trying to treat this as much like an RFP type process as possible. So once somebody has applied, we do ask that y'all not communicate with them outside of the committee process once we're actually under review. But prior to that point, yes, certainly be ambassadors for this program to your communities. I think the biggest thing is once somebody's officially applied is keeping that communication within the committee process.
Very good.
I think the industries and organizations that might be overarchingly applying on behalf of certain individuals too, really hitting home that they can go to we have a dedicated website for this. We're pushing all this information out, and we are also resources for them. So I think the biggest thing is too, and I've gotten a ton of calls this past week. Some of these folks are like 3-man teams. They don't have grant writers, and so they feel pretty intimidated by the process. I'm here to help. If I need to do a webinar on how to apply for the grant, kind of going over everything, we can do stuff like that. We did that for the NEUs, and that was very, very helpful for them. But just letting them know that, we are a resource for them and they can check for all kinds of updates. You can give my number out. You can have them email me and we can kind of walk them through the process and just so they feel comfortable applying.
Sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chairman England asked about providing technical assistance to Chairman, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, but I mean, I think we're going to have quite a few folks asking questions or needing assistance because based on kind of what y'all have gone through, it looks like, especially some of those smaller shops, like Jen mentioned just a minute ago, where there's 2 or 3 people, but the impact could be huge if they were successful in their application. It may need a little bit of hand holding, and just going to see if there's going to be the ability to do that hand holding as necessary. And I've got one other question too in a second.
Yeah, so we have a team actually that can assist with that, and we're actually bringing on other folks. Samira, who is on this call right now, taking the notes for us, is our grant specialist. She's also a wealth of knowledge and has been my right-hand woman in, all the, everything grants, thus far. We can, like I said, we can establish some webinar dates to kind of hit everybody virtually because we can't hit the whole state. So that might be a good idea. And you guys all have my phone number. You guys all have my email address. So if you have ideas that we could do, that we could provide technical assistance to on the front end and then during the application period, shoot them over to me and we can kind of go through that and synthesize the ideas into one and get on that. So yeah, we don't mind. We did that. We had 515 NEUs and we plugged through that. So we're more than happy to provide that assistance.
Okay, the other question I had, you mentioned something about the matching funds, and I think I heard you say a dollar for dollar match. Is that what the expectation is? Then if an applicant puts in for 10 million, they've got to have 10 million to match it?
I think based on your scoring, that we would give higher weight to those who have more matching funds coming to the table, not as an absolute requirement for
Right.
application. So that's what we're trying to look at how we can best leverage the funds that we have there with other available funding sources. And I think this also is part of the governor wanting this to be as broad reaching as possible so that we have grants that are, looking at regions of the state or statewide opportunity, rather than a lot of very, very niche ones. So that's why that's on there for that matching piece as to what they're leveraging in their own communities.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I want to go back to her first question about talking to providers. You stated that we're treating this as an RFP, and you stated that we cannot talk to anyone when they apply. So it's a quiet period between August 1st and the 31st, or when we are reviewing?
Yeah, that's a good question.
We won't know when they apply.
Right.
That's what my-
Well, we are actually going to, as they apply, when we get the applications, at some point we will post the entity that applies, a brief description of their application, the amount requested and things like that, which we'll go over. We'll have another meeting session to kind of go over when we finalize that process. I think, the way that general grant reviews, when they happen, if you are a part of a committee and an applicant expresses interest in applying, at that point, you kind of just lead them into the direction, good luck. At that point, you can push them over to me if you would like to, and I can kind of, help them, determine the eligibility. You can give me the backstory on, kind of what they're looking at. That way, there's no conflict of interest for you when you're reviewing that.
Right, I just want to make sure we all understand that the quiet period is
I would say-
August 1st through
I would say-
September 22nd.
Correct. I would,
Entire
yes.
period, okay.
I mean, if someone calls you, you can say,
Yeah.
but if they, once they express that interest in applying,
Right.
yep, you can, say, you can go over to their website, Jen or Stephanie can kind of help walk you through the process and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that's great,
clarify
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Commissioner McMurray asked about matching other federal fund sources. Commissioner, I'll have to go and look that up
It's actually,
specifically.
it is in the guidance. They
Okay.
cannot match other federal funds.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. So they cannot match other federal funds with this COVID money, with the American Rescue Plan Act money. That's a good question. Yeah.
So, for instance, back to when I asked the question regarding community action agencies, they get funding from federal government also.
They cannot use it as match. They can use it in addition to,
Gotcha.
they just can't use it as match funding. Correct. Yeah, that is explicitly mentioned in the interim guidance. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Now, I was trying to find a sheet that would reference businesses could be a possible eligible applicant, possibly.
Yeah, it'd be under the,
What type of,
Eligibility.
be a business organization? What would be an actual definition of a business organization? Could a funeral home be a business organization?
it's pretty broad. However, the entity has to have a DUNS number to apply. So, I mean, they have to, express that they have the competencies and capabilities of managing this type of funds. If there was an association for, I'm just throwing this out there, I don't know if this even exists. I'm just saying, so if there was a funeral home organization.
It is.
Okay, well, so something like that could apply on behalf of funeral homes to address negative economic impact, something like that. Absolutely, because in that negative economic impact was the survivors criteria that Stephanie went over. So something like that would absolutely, and They may or may not have a DUNS, and I've spoken to some folks in water and sewer that didn't have one, but they connected with a city or something. A DUNS is very simple to get, but if they're doing that on behalf of all of the funeral homes throughout the state or a certain region or whatever, that would definitely be eligible.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you guys get these questions about eligibility from businesses, hey, would we be eligible for, this and this project? Those are questions that you can field. You have my number, you can text me if you're on the spot, if they're asking you on the spot something and you want to, quick answer something, call me, we can kind of get you, if we don't have the answer, I'll research it real quick and try to get you the best answer we can.
And we had a similar question in the chat about trade associations. And yes, I mean, we would encourage trade associations to apply on behalf of their members rather than every individual small business. So we really would love to see trade industries that are in these negative impacted sectors to apply on behalf of their membership and then show us how they can help us disperse those funds to their members.
Did you have a question, Tim? I'm sorry.
DUNS number?
That is a Duns and Bradstreet number. It is a number that, it's a unique identifying number that Treasury requires. Most larger business, I know almost all state entities have them, most cities have
I
them.
don't want to know nothing about treasure. This is different from the regular EIN.
Correct. This is different from the EIN. And just so you know, and if you're talking to folks too, if they Google Duns number, I'm gonna put the link on our website tomorrow. But if you're talking to folks and they actually Google that, the first one that pops up will be a paid site to expedite their Duns. The Duns is free. They should not click on that. So just kind of warn them if you're talking to somebody that might not be familiar with DUNS.
Okay.
But I would always refer them back to our website because it's going to have the links, the official links embedded in there. In doubt, please just push them to that state and local. And if you don't have that, I'll once we're have concluded this, I'll send that out in an email so you all have reference to that specific portal that we have for that website.
Yes, so there'll be portals and I think somewhere I was reading the information that you are put online, there are definitions that you guys, words that were defined for us in the event we weren't familiar with them.
Yes, correct. And if there's anything that you are not familiar with, send me an email and I can even make a fact sheet. I use acronyms in the grant world all the time and I forget, just like the state, I came from GBI and even I was already in state and then coming over here, there were so many different grant acronyms too. So I totally understand. Yeah, there's a lot.
Senator Walker asked about projects of regional or statewide significance, like reservoir projects or regional airports, and who would apply. Yes, state agencies are eligible to apply on, as the lead on some of these projects, or regional development authorities. So again, that's, we would like to see local or regional development authorities and broader entities that can have that widespread reach. And it really should be whoever the funding is going to need to funnel through as the sub-grantee to manage and pay for the project. That's really who we want to have apply to us, is who's going to directly receive the money and be best capable of dispersing it as part of that project implementation process.
They must have that matching capability.
They don't have to.
Oh, okay.
They don't. And the reason why we added that, like Stephanie said, was that the priority from the governor, but it also allows the counties that receive smaller portions to be able to bolster their awards by matching their funds, so they can match funds.
So the other piece of this is non-entitlement units. So small cities who we have just been dispersing these funds through, if they want to bring their funds back to the table and join in with other surrounding communities, because some of these, we recognize that the amount that an individual city may have gotten was so small that it's difficult for them to do a project on their own. And so if they can pair with a regional development authority and everybody kind of is putting into the pool and then match it with what we have available from the state, we can get a lot more done. So the governor really wants that collaborative process as we're looking at these projects. Representative Dickey, I see you have your hand raised for a question.
Yes, I was just wondering about eligibility of projects such as water or sewer that a city or county is already in the design phase for, already got it somewhat started in some form or fashion. Would that be eligible?
I would expect so.
Yeah, and there's no supplanting rules under this one. So yeah, I would think that would be eligible too. They would just in their project design and implementation, they would just need to have like some sort of stopping point for what design, where they're at right now and what they want this one to fund, because they would definitely need to have like a timeline attached. Doesn't have to be a very sophisticated, we're not looking for, a grant writer to, put that together, but just something to say, this is kind of where this is where our funds take us. We would like to use this funding to get us from our ending point to, here, and this will, X, Y, and Z will happen along the way. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So can we go back for a moment to your statement relating to regional commissions? Am I understanding you to say, Stephanie, regional commissions could apply for this funding, and like local governments or nonprofits can apply for funding from the regional commission for maybe like example, job training programs, things of that nature? Am I understanding that correctly?
I would say tentatively, yes. I think what we want to see is that they have kind of a ready tool to partner with and kind of a known impact that they're bringing as part of that, rather than, I hope I can go find $5 million worth of spend out of this. So I think part of that application process needs to be them really identifying their targeted communities and how they would disperse that.
And that would fall under that project design and implementation. It would be, X entity is planning on partnering with, X entities.
Response to Amy Miller about UPL payments being delayed.
Yeah, I saw that, and I need to get it to you. Yes, they're delayed.
Yeah, but
Smaller communities that don't have the grant writers there, and some that do, that'll have amazing, project design and implementation, but we can't discount those that, have the smaller ones. But as long as they hit those and they've identified how they're going to spend the funds, by when they're going to do that, that's what she means by those already identified projects in mind.
See, regarding matching funds in the broadband arena, some of the most underserved areas of the state are in really rural areas. Would the emphasis on matching funds necessarily exclude the most exacting broadband deserts? I don't believe so. We're just looking for skin in the game opportunities, and again, trying to maximize impact. So we're, again, looking for those. I got a small pot and I can't do anything with it, but I'd love to throw it in on a bigger broadband project. I think that's really what we're looking for here. How can we bring some of our private providers to the table and, leveraging these funds? And I think throwing it back to the technical assistance question, we will have an opportunity to go back to applicants and say, if you guys want to see more information about something, to have them provide additional information, or if something was missing, Jen and her team will definitely be counseling them on, you need to also give us X, Y, Z. And then again, through the presentation process, there'll be the opportunity for you guys to ask questions of them and get an additional information. So we understand that some of these are going to be very large, complex projects. We may not have 100% of the information on the front end. So there will be some opportunity for that back and forth.
Will there be,
I think it's just feedback.
will there be an opportunity for, well, no. A part of the criteria will also include, say, for example, businesses, length of time these businesses have been a part of, they've been in business, I guess, for lack of a better word here. Or we just look, that's important to me. How long, how successful, or their impact, the impact that they had on the community, those kinds of things. So that's a part of the criteria that we're going to be using to look at the projects as well, right?
So under that capabilities and competencies criteria, that if I keep thinking like YMCA, and I know this is not even part of this. So if I'm YMCA and I come to the table and I say, the YMCA has been in business for such and such years. We have, 20 staff members that are ready to implement this project. Of those staff members, we have a project director. We do not have anyone, we're going to hire a project director under this. However, we have an executive, blah, 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 and five counselors that are ready to go. Jane Doe has been with the YMCA for over 17 years, has counseled, hundreds of students in aftercare, stuff like that, that shows that they have, been a part of the community for a long time. It will be in that section of criteria. I don't think that it would necessarily discount, like, we wouldn't score someone who's been in business for 20 years higher than someone who's been in for 2, but they just have to demonstrate their competencies and capabilities of handling the project and funds and their impact to the communities. Yeah.
And we'll be issuing instructions along with this too, to help guide them with the information that we're looking for. And that's really what we want to hear from you guys, is what information are you as committee members looking for in these applications, to provide that to Jen, so that we can incorporate that into the instructions to make sure that if there's something you really want to see like that, I think that's a great point, to try to include as much of that in their application as possible. So yes, please feel free. We have a question on here about who to contact. Jen is going to be your point person. And we really do appreciate and look for y'all's feedback going into this to make sure we have as complete an application process as possible. So what is going to help you guys make the best decision? Chairman England, you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. One more question. Sorry to keep sticking my neck in here. If an association or organization applies on behalf of numerous separate entities, is there the ability for a portion of those funds to go toward the management of the awarding of the grants, and then the required, I guess, consolidation of the reporting that comes back? So basically management, if an entity applied for 40 million, just using a round number, say they applied for 40 million, is it acceptable for a piece of that then to be used for the administrative side of making sure that compliance is in place, that the reporting is done, and those kind of things?
Yeah, so there is there's an administrative line on the budget that they will submit. So there is no administrative cap on these state funds, state fiscal recovery funds. So they can put in administrative fees by people or data collection or anything like that. Yes, they can use that for administration.
Okay, thank you.
If they don't have a grant writer on staff, they need to hire someone. They can use the funds from administrative portion.
They won't have had the funds yet, so it wouldn't be retroactive, because if they didn't get awarded and they hired someone, I would, as a grant writer of over 10 years now, I would strongly, I would not tell someone myself to hire someone in order to do this, because it is such a simplified, it's just fields in there. And again, they're not being graded on how well it's written. As long as the content is there, we are fine with that. And that's what we've been telling folks. If something is missing from that too, when we kind of go through it before we hand it to you, if they're missing a timeline and that's something that we required, we're going to reach out to them. We'll kick it back to them and say, please include a timeline so the committee can review that as well. Right? Yeah.
Okay, so the assistance for unemployment workers, this state already brought that to an end. Where's that money going? Unemployment, that the state has already ended that, this program to, the unemployed for the extra $300. Where is that money going?
So the negative impact committee would be looking at providing job training opportunities for folks who are unemployed, and job placement services, et cetera. Some of those more tangible services for people who are unemployed to get them back to work.
And how is that going to be measurable, and who's going to all be qualified to do that?
Well, that would be whoever is applying to run that kind of a program.
Yeah, if you look under the reporting requirements, we had just kind of got through that before you walked in. There's reporting requirements that each applicant, if they are awarded, they have to turn around to us. So the entity, when they apply, in order to be awarded, they have to demonstrate their capabilities to be able to collect the data that we then have to turn around to Treasury in order for that to be measurable.
So right now you're saying like employer will they basically gonna apply and qualify for getting this money, and then they will show how they can train an individual.
If
to the
you,
job.
there's an eligibility piece of that on, let me see if I can look it up. So this is a completely different program for the state and local fiscal recovery funds. This is just the state piece. If you look at the eligibility, sorry, I'm trying to find it. There's eligibility requirements that we've broken down, and Stephanie was just explaining too. So, I don't know if you can find that slide again, but government organizations, and under that is state agencies, county governments, city townships, city or townships, specific district governments, and then Georgia professional associations and organizations, which comprise of industry trade associations, business organizations, trade or professional nonprofit organizations. So right now, the eligibility is pretty varied and wide, so we just don't know what we're gonna get as of yet. So this is determining who can apply, and the eligible criteria under the 3 different categories is what you will all be.
Look at these pages aren't numbered, so.
So we may have an entity like, for example, Goodwill, apply for a grant to do certain job training services as part of their mission. So then they would be awarded that grant, provide those services, and then they'll be reporting back to us on a quarterly basis of what they've spent in the grant, the number of individuals that they've served through their program, et cetera. So it'd be the state directly providing that assistance, through a job training program. We would find the provider themselves would be the one applying for the grant.
And you already laid out the mechanisms to do this, I mean, for the accountability part is already laid out?
That's determined by the Treasury. Yes, there's like a 100-page document that defines what we have to report. So in order for an applicant to be awarded from us, they have to demonstrate that they can meet those requirements. They can turn over that data to us, and then we report that to Treasury as a reporting mechanism.
Be interesting to see.
That it will.
I'll be looking forward.
Did we also, I have a question. I'm
Yes, ma'am.
sorry. Did we also say that schools as well as businesses, like we have K through 12, as well as our secondary, post-secondary schools could also apply for the funds? And, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And there will be, just so you all are aware too, there's Gear 2 funding that we're also in the process of going through the application planning process as well. So.
There is no other funding that the state will be diverting. They're just doing, right now, it's every parts of the American Rescue Plan is going to be used as is. It won't be, because I know.
Actually, so if you go to, let me show you, sorry, we broke it down a little bit in the very beginning. If you look under, I think it's your 3rd page. Yeah, the front of your 3rd page. So this is what we have available. Right now we have $4.8 billion available for Georgia. We've only received, we applied for all that we could, the entire tranche. Treasury is breaking it up into supposedly 2 tranches. We are guaranteed we already received the first tranche, which is 2.4 billion. There is no guarantee that we'll get the second, so that's why we're focused on this first tranche, like Stephanie had mentioned earlier. And so if you turn the page further, the committee focus areas here is what the governor has determined are the first 3 priorities for the first part of this funds. Right now, we have 300 million under the broadband. We have 200, thank you. I feel like being away. 250 under water and sewer and 325 million. These are planning numbers right now. We don't know how, we just really ask for your patience in all of this process because this is something we've never done. All the states are kind of figuring it out right now. And so we've put this here as, for lack of better term, place markers to determine what we know we're going to start with. And if we get thousands of applications, then we might have to revisit these numbers based on the need. We just don't know what the need is for the applicants right now.
Is there going to be some follow-up meetings to this one? Because I'm very interested. This is money that I really want to be effective to our taxpayers that pay this amount of money. And the result of COVID has really been hit really hard. So, and I'm going to be working with my county as well, Gwinnett, just to see exactly how the funds are coming, because I guess from the state level, there are certain things broadly, and then, there are some things that are unique to each of the counties and what they're getting. And I know there are some parts in there for schools as well, so, I look forward to, I mean, I'm gonna have to head to Gwinnett, but, thanks for that.
Yes, yes. Anybody else?
Jim.
Just
One second, we got one in the back. Yes, sorry.
from a logistics standpoint, how many applications do you expect to receive?
Honestly, I really can't tell. It's so, I mean, honestly, from just the past 2 weeks, I can say I've gotten 20 phone calls maybe from water, sewer, broadband kind of thing, and that may not be an accurate representation. So we could literally have 20, it could run a scope, right? It could be 20 multi-million-dollar projects that we get. It could be 1,000, varying from multi-million to 10 million to 5 million to even below that. So again, because the states have never done this before, and this is very different funding criteria than CARES was, we just really don't know. Yeah.
So I guess the follow-up question is, each committee member is going to review all the applications, or are they going to?
Their specific committee.
Specific area. So 2 weeks timeline, because I'm just thinking about the CARES funding that when we divvied it up, there was no way anybody's getting all those applications. So I'm curious to see how commitment that's expected of the committee members to get through the application in a timely process. And that seems like a very tight window.
So that's what I was saying back in that timeline. All of these are anticipated dates, and that's what I was referring to. If we get thousands, obviously we're going to have to rethink this, and we'll push those dates out some. And it's based off of it. If you guys feel overwhelmed and can't get to them, we want to have every one of them looked at, give them the same amount of time. So those are just tentative timeframes, and we will adjust as needed if you guys need some more time.
And then the last piece, I'm sorry, is back to Representative point regarding communication. Is there any ability to actually let people know this is happening? And I say that because, like, for example, finding today's meeting, we had to run cap. I mean, like, as a legislator, I didn't even know it was happening. And so what do we do to make sure the majority, is there any money able to do advertising throughout the state?
There actually is outreach funding on their, they just edited their FAQs or their interim. Sorry, they keep updating it so much. I can't remember which document it is, but they did do an update because someone asked that question too about the outreach, and there is outreach funding. So that's what we're kind of hitting at when she had talked about letting folks know as much as we can. So that is an avenue for that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great.
If I may, I understand there are some
yeah, I think there's one on the phone too.
like people online, or they don't know who's asking questions in this room, so we
actually we have you on camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just received a message that people didn't know.
I can see is eligible use for first. Only thing I can see is a committed focus area. I don't see anybody on.
No, you're still on camera. You're still.
Repeat that, please.
All the thing I see on my camera is committed focus area. The screen is taken.
Oh, yes, we're a small window. Sorry, because I am sharing my screen. I can.
Oh, yeah, she just shared her screen. Yeah, when we're in presentation mode, you should be able to see the folks on the side. Sorry about that. Yeah,
Now,
you should be able. Okay.
Now I can see. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Okay, that's what they were asking.
Yeah, thank you.
We've been out of the office so much, we don't even know how to use technology anymore. That's that when you're in the office, right? We're geniuses at home doing it.
All right.
I'm sorry, there was someone on the call that had a question.
Yes, I did. Representative Smiley. When you talk about the three committees and you talk about the total outline that the Georgia will be getting from the Rescue Act, what is it delineated as to what portion goes to what? Are we just going to be looking at all of them that come to our respective the three committees? Or is there a line of delineation, or is there a set amount for each particular focus area? How do we determine what the bottom line is, and how do we meet those obligations?
So right now, like we said, these are just planning numbers because again, we don't know the volume. But if there are, if the total of award requests exceed, if it exceeds these amounts, we will absolutely still look at those grant applications. And then if we need to pull in more funds into those respective pots to meet those, if they all score and folks want to fund them, then we will add funding to those each individual committees to fund those projects. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, thank you very much.
Stephanie and Jen, this is Janine at GDOT. Got a question for you. If you could clarify whether a business, a private business would be able to directly receive the funds, or do they have to go through one of those entities that was listed on that one slide?
They are eligible to apply individually. So they would be an eligible entity to apply. I think, again, that what we're hoping to see out of some of these projects is broader applicability to a community or a region rather than an individual business, but it would depend on the business, right? If it's somebody has a statewide outreach, then, that might be different. But
I should clarify, I was really referring to specifically to the broadband committee, which is going to be very different than the others.
But they would be eligible.
Thank you.
We had a question about the grant scoring protocol. Says, since individual scoring has a subjective component, will a member that's generally more generous in scoring have a greater impact on awards, or would OPB adjust, like gymnastics, throwing out the high and the low?
So we're not going to be scoring them. So it will ultimately be your individual scores, the scores adjusted from the consensus meeting and that final scoring. We will not touch your score. But what I can say is, so for the meeting prior to when you guys actually start to review things, my intended goal was to go through some samples and kind of show you how I would score them and kind of talk through that and to kind of see the consensus of how, if you guys have questions, that they come up. And in a general, I've been a part of several grant reviews, and that is an issue, but the weight of each of the total, when you take that on the committee and then the final score, it would not skew it so high that if someone just gave them 10s across the board. I will say that very rarely will you ever see a 0 and very rarely would you ever see a 10. If we're handing you something, it's likely already kind of gotten through that checklist. So it's probably over a 3-ish at that point anyway, depending. We will not change your scores, and someone who generously applies a higher scoring would not skew it that much. But we will provide you instructions to kind of guide you through that, to kind of keep that.
Other questions from the group?
Maybe get started.
I know, it's going to be a lot to digest, and certainly this is not our only opportunity to get together on this. We anticipate, as frequently heading into the review process, and we're certainly available anytime to answer any questions as they come up.
And if you guys have ideas about outreach, please email me, call me, let me know your thoughts. Definitely open to all that. And that's, again, like Stephanie said, that's why we had you guys here for the commencement meeting, to kind of get your feedback on the front end of everything. That'd be great. Was there a question on the call? No.
Okay. Well, we certainly appreciate everybody's participation today, and let us know if there's anything that you guys need in the interim.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Bye.
We have a dedicated website too, and if you want to